My name is Raymond Caldwell. I am 63 years old, and 8 months ago I signed a document that cost my son everything he thought he had already taken from me. It was a Tuesday morning. My son Daniel stood in the doorway of what used to be my bedroom, the one I'd slept in for 31 years, and he said, "Dad, we need that room for the baby." He said it the way you'd ask someone to move their car. Flat. Efficient. Done. I nodded. I said, "Of course."
I carried my bags to the small room at the back of the house, the one with the window that faces the wall. What Daniel didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 2 weeks earlier I had sat across from a man named Gerald Osei in a quiet office downtown, and I had already moved something far more important than my furniture. The next morning, Daniel's phone rang. It was the bank. They needed a signature, mine specifically.
He looked at the phone. Then he looked at me, and for the first time in 4 years, he actually saw me. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now let me take you back, about 6 years ago, to the day my wife Eleanor said something I didn't understand. Not until that Tuesday morning when my son handed me a box for my things. I grew up watching my father lose things quietly. He never complained. He never raised his voice. He simply watched, the way a man watches weather, and then he made his adjustments. He built things slowly, carefully, the way you build something meant to last. My father's name was Arthur Caldwell. He smelled of cedar wood and machine oil from the furniture workshop he ran on the edge of town. His hands were wide and rough, the knuckles permanently darkened with wood stain that never fully washed out. I used to think, when I was young, that his hands looked like maps, every line a road he'd travelled. The workshop had a particular sound, the low hum of the belt sander, the creak of the second floorboard near the door. You always knew who was coming in before you saw them. In winter, my father kept a small electric heater in the corner, and it glowed orange and ticked softly. That sound, tick, 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 meant safety to me. I spent summers there, afternoons watching him work. He would hand me a piece of sandpaper and say, "Raymond, you work with the grain. Not against it, you work with the grain, and eventually the wood tells you what it wants to become." I was 11. I thought he was talking about furniture. My mother left when I was 9. This is not her story, but it shaped mine, because after she left, it was just my father and me in a house that was too quiet. He cooked, simply. Rice, beans, sometimes a whole roasted chicken on Sundays that filled. The entire kitchen with a smell that felt like being held. He never spoke badly of her. He never explained her absence. He simply continued, working, building, providing. And when I was 16 one evening, we were eating that Sunday chicken, the light coming sideways through the kitchen window, gold and thin. He put down his fork and said, "Raymond, whatever you build in this life, make sure your name is on it. Not because you don't trust people, but because the paper remembers, even when the people forget." I nodded. I was 16. I was thinking about a girl at school named Patricia. I did not understand what he meant. I met Eleanor when I was 24. We married at 27. We bought our house at 31, a wide, light-filled house on Mercer Street, and both our names were on the deed. My father came to the signing. He sat in the back of the attorney's office, and he nodded slowly, the way he did when something was exactly right. He died 4 years later, quietly, in his sleep. The workshop passed to me. Daniel was born a year after that. I watched my son grow with the particular pride of a man who has lost much and built slowly. He was sharp, charming. He knew how to enter a room. Eleanor used to say he got that from her side. I think she was right, but I also watched, the way my father taught me to watch. And I noticed small things, the way Daniel, At 12, never shared anything unless he had calculated what he'd receive in return, the way he borrowed his cousin's bicycle and returned it with a bent wheel and a shrug. The way, at 19, he told me his college friend's business idea at dinner. And I saw in his eyes not admiration, but arithmetic. I said nothing. I worked with the grain. But I noticed Eleanor was diagnosed on a Wednesday in February. The weather that day was the particular grey of old concrete, flat, uniform, without shadow. I remember the doctor's office smelled of antiseptic and fresh coffee, a combination that has never stopped feeling wrong to me since pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. We had 14 months. We used them carefully. We travelled twice. Once to see her sister in Vancouver, once to a small inn in Vermont that she had always wanted to visit. The inn had wide wooden floorboards and a fireplace in the lobby that crackled all night. She wore a blue scarf against the cold. I can still see her at the window, looking out at the snow. She died on a Sunday morning, quietly. The way good people often go, without ceremony, without drama, as if they simply decided they were finished and stepped out of the room. Daniel arrived at the house within the hour. His wife, Cora, arrived with him. They were efficient, kind in the way of people performing kindness rather than feeling it. They spoke in soft voices and made practical arrangements. I sat in the kitchen and drank coffee I couldn't taste. It was 3 weeks after the funeral, a Thursday evening, the house still carrying the particular silence of a place where someone is newly absent. When I heard them, I'd come downstairs for water. The kitchen light was off. Their voices came from the dining room. Daniel's voice, low. The house is the asset. Everything else is noise. Cora. She left no will of her own? Daniel. Her share passes to the surviving spouse automatically, so it's Dad's, but Dad is 62 and... A pause. He's not going to manage this place alone for long. Cora. So we wait? Daniel. We help him see reason. He likes feeling needed. We use that. I stood very still in the dark kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car passed slowly on the street. I did not move. I did not make a sound. I stood there, and I understood, fully, completely, without any desire to misunderstand what my son had become, and I understood something else, that to them I was already furniture, something to be arranged, something that occupied space they were already measuring. That's the word they used for everything that used to be love, asset. I went back upstairs. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, and I thought about my father's hands, those wide, rough, map-like hands, and I thought about what he had said at that kitchen table when I was 16 years old. Make sure your name is on it. I was 62 years old. The house was in my name, both names originally. Now, after Eleanor, mine alone. The workshop was in my name, the accounts were in my name, but I was also a man whose son had just described him as something to be waited out, and I made a decision. Not loud, not angry, the way my father made decisions. Quietly, firmly, like sanding with the grain. I would not wait for them to move me. I would move first, in a direction they couldn't seek. Eleanor had always kept a small tin box in the back of the bedroom closet, green with a painted floral lid, the kind that used to hold Christmas cookies. I knew it existed. I had never opened it. It was hers, and I respected that. After she died, I left it where it was for nearly 3 weeks. I wasn't ready. On the 22nd day, a Thursday afternoon, the light coming through the bedroom window at a low winter angle, I took it down from the shelf. Inside, her mother's earrings. A photograph of us at Niagara Falls, 1987. Both of us young and laughing at something out of frame. A folded piece of paper with her handwriting, and underneath everything, a business card, Gerald O.C. and Partners. Estate planning and asset protection. And below the name, in Eleanor's handwriting, Call him first. He knows everything. E.
Held the card for a long time. I read her note 4 times. Then I read her handwritten letter. It was 2 pages. Small, careful script. She had written it, she said, 6 months before her diagnosis. As if she had known something was coming before she had words for it, she wrote, "Raymond, if you are reading this, then I am gone. And I need you to know that I saw what I saw. Daniel is our son, and I love him, but love and trust are not the same word. I have already spoken to Gerald.
Who everything is arranged. Your name is on everything that matters. Do not let them rush you. Do not sign anything under pressure, and call Gerald before you do anything else. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. The house was quiet around me, the kind of quiet that has weight. I called Gerald Osei the next morning. He answered on the second ring. His voice was calm, measured, the voice of a man who had delivered difficult information many times and had learned that steadiness, who everything is arranged, your name is on everything that matters. Do not let them rush you. Do not sign anything under pressure, and call Gerald before you do anything else. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. The house was quiet around me, the kind of quiet that has weight. I called Gerald Osei the next morning. He answered on the second ring. His voice was calm, measured, the voice of a man who had delivered difficult information many times and had learned that steadiness, been transferred into an LLC in my name. A small investment account had been separated from the joint finances and placed in my name alone. And there was one more arrangement, a right of first refusal clause on the house, registered with the county, which meant that if the property were ever to be sold or transferred, I would have to formally agree in writing, in front of a notary. In plain language, nothing could move without me. Nothing. I asked Gerald how long Eleanor had been planning this. He said, "She first came to me 14 months before she passed. She said," he paused, checked his notes. She said, "My husband worked with his hands his whole life to build something. I want to make sure no one can take it from him while he's still standing in it." Have you ever had to stay silent to protect yourself, even when every part of you wanted to speak up? Tell me in the comments. I read them. 2 weeks after my meeting with Gerald, I overheard Daniel on the phone. I was in the hallway. He was in the kitchen. He did not hear me come downstairs. "The market's good right now," he said. "If we list by spring, yeah. The mortgage is cleared, so it's pure equity. Split it 3 ways. Yeah, Marcus gets his cut for handling Dad. No, he doesn't know. He thinks it's a family decision." He laughed. Soft, businesslike. I went back upstairs. I took out my phone. I typed 2 words to Gerald Osei. "I'm ready." He replied in 4. "I'll prepare the documents." That night, Daniel and Cora went to sleep, believing they were 2 months away from a very large deposit. They had a spreadsheet, I later learned. They had already chosen which items in the house they would keep. I knew something they didn't. I turned off my bedside lamp. I slept well. Gerald explained the plan over 2 meetings. It was not complicated. That was what surprised me. I had expected legal language, difficult concepts, things I would have to strain to understand. But Gerald was the kind of man who respected the people he worked with enough to speak clearly. "The trust protects the house," he said. "You are the trustee. You make every decision. No one can compel a sale, a transfer, or a mortgage without your written, notarized consent. If Daniel tries to take out a loan against the property, which I believe he's looking into, the bank will find there's no equity available to him. The title is clean, but the trust structure blocks secondary liens without trustee approval." "What if he tries to have me declared incompetent?" I asked. Gerald looked at me. He said, "That process takes years, requires medical evidence, and goes before a judge. You are a healthy 63-year-old man with no cognitive impairment. He would need more than ambition." And the account, I asked, solely in your name. Beneficiary, your choice. He paused. Eleanor left it open for you to decide. I decided. But I did not tell anyone. One morning, about a week into this, Cora came to find me in the back garden. She sat beside me on the small bench near the rose bushes Eleanor had planted, the ones that bloomed deep red every May without anyone asking them to. She said, "Raymond, we want you to know, we're not trying to push you out. We just think, at your age, a smaller place might be less stressful, and we've found somewhere really lovely, independent living, a pool, activities." I looked at the roses. I said, "I'll think about it." She smiled. I smiled. My nephew Thomas, Daniel's cousin, a quiet young man of 22 who sometimes came for Sunday dinner, caught me in the hallway one afternoon. He looked at me with the uncertain eyes of someone who knows something is wrong, but doesn't know what to do with the knowledge. "Uncle Ray," he said, "are you okay?" "I'm fine, Thomas. It's just—" He stopped. "Daniel's been asking questions about the house, about Aunt Eleanor's accounts. I didn't think it was my place, but—" I put my hand on his shoulder. "You're a good boy," I said. "You always have been." He looked at me like he wanted to say more. I didn't give him more to carry. That night I drove to the workshop. I hadn't been in weeks. It smelled exactly as it always had, cedar and oil and the particular, dry warmth of wood in a closed space. I turned on the single bulb over my father's old bench. I ran my hand across the surface, worn smooth in the middle from decades of use, rough at the edges where the finish still held. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to turn. I almost broke that night. I will not pretend otherwise. I sat on the old stool, and I felt the full weight of it. What my son had become, what my wife had quietly protected me from, what I was now required to do without losing myself in the doing of it. I cried. Not dramatically, not with noise, just the way older men cry when no one is watching. Slowly, quietly, like a leak you don't notice until there's water on the floor. And then I remembered the kitchen table, the Sunday chicken, the gold light through the window. I wish this were different. I wish Daniel had been the kind of son who would have sat beside me in my grief instead of calculating its value. I wish he had wanted to keep something of what we had built as a family, but wishes don't hold titles. What my father built and what Eleanor protected does. I drove home. I was ready. The house was quiet. Daniel and Cora had gone to sleep early. I could hear faintly the sound of the heat cycling on, that low, reliable hum. I sat at my desk in the small back bedroom, the one with the window that faces the wall, with my laptop open and a cup of cold tea. I'd stopped drinking an hour earlier. Gerald appeared on the screen at exactly 11:55. He was in his office. His desk lamp was on behind him. He was in a white shirt, no jacket, which told me he had been there for hours. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, "how are you feeling?" "Clear," I said. He nodded. "Good, then let's finish it." He walked me through the final documents. There were 3. The first, a formal declaration confirming me as sole trustee of the Caldwell Family Trust, with updated terms making the trust irrevocable upon my signature. No one, not a family member, not a court, not a creditor, could touch the principal assets without triggering a legal process that would take years and cost more than the assets were worth to contest. The second, an updated beneficiary designation on the investment account. I named Thomas, the quiet nephew who had asked in a hallway if I was okay. He would not know until I was gone. That was fine. He had earned it by simply being a decent person. That is rarer than it sounds. The third, a letter to the bank, notarized in advance through Gerald's firm, formally notifying them that any loan application against properties held in the Caldwell Family Trust required trustee countersignature. in person. Verified. I signed all three. Gerald said, "It's done, Mr. Caldwell. Eleanor would be—" He paused. He was not a sentimental man. "She would be satisfied," he said. I said she would. I closed the laptop. The room was dark, except for the small glow of the streetlight coming through the window that faces the wall. My phone showed 12:03 a.m. I am 63 years old. I am a trustee. I am a homeowner. I am the sole signatory on every asset my father and my wife and I spent a lifetime building. And downstairs, Daniel slept without moving. He had a meeting at a real estate office in 4 days. He had told me it was just something for work. He had a printed listing tucked into a folder in his briefcase. Our house on Mercer Street, photographed in summer, the roses in full red bloom. He would find out what I had done in about 92 hours. I turned off the lamp. I slept better than I had in years. The call came on a Monday. I was in the back garden drinking my morning coffee, watching the roses, still bare in the winter cold, still holding their shape. Daniel came out through the sliding door. His face was the particular color of a man who has just run a calculation and gotten an answer he cannot accept. "Dad," he said, "the bank called me." "Oh?" I said. They said, he stopped, started again. They said there's a trust on the house and the investment accounts. They said any transaction requires a trustee signature. In person. "Yes," I said. "What does that mean?" I looked at him. He was my son. He had my father's height and his mother's eyes. He had grown up in this house, in the room that was now being prepared for a baby who deserved better than what he was learning from watching his father. "It means," I said, "that your name is not on it, and the paper remembers, even when the people forget." He stood very still. The morning was cold and clear. A bird called somewhere in the neighbor's tree. The heat from my coffee cup rose in a thin curl of steam. "When did you—" He started. "Your mother arranged it," I said. "A long time ago." He looked at me like I was still the person he thought I was. I wasn't. I hadn't been for 8 months. I did not raise my voice. I did not list his offenses. I did not tell him what I had heard in the dark kitchen 3 weeks after his mother's funeral. I did not tell him about the spreadsheet, the listing, or a man named Marcus who was apparently owed a cut for handling me. I simply finished my coffee, and I said, "The roses will need attention in April. I'd appreciate some help with that. If you're willing." I went back inside. He stayed in the garden for a long time. My father used to say, "You work with the grain, and eventually the wood tells you what it wants to become." I always thought he meant patience, craft, the practical wisdom of a man who worked with his hands. He meant something else entirely. He meant understand the nature of the thing you're working with before you decide what to make of it. Don't force. Don't resist.